We're called to be people that we don't run when it gets dark. We don't run away and hide when it gets dark, watching a Zoom screen with a mask on. We actually bring the light into the darkness.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I have a very special guest to introduce to you, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. I can't wait to hear his story. Sean Feucht, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, honored to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So you are a Christian recording artist. That's one thing, but also you're an activist. Tell us a little bit about how those two things came together for you.
Well, for about 20 years, ever since I was a teenager, I've been doing missions around the world. I've really been a missionary. And so I've been bringing the gospel and hope and good news and resources to some of the hardest and darkest places in the world, places like Iraq, Afghanistan, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, China, India, 70 other countries. The activism piece in the US really didn't hit home until, I had 4 kids, ages 10 or 12, 10, 8, and 4. I started thinking about what is their future going to look like? Things are getting crazy. And then, of course, COVID, the lockdowns, which exposed a whole lot across this nation, exposed people's motives, agendas, and, it was stuff that I could not stay silent about. So that's kind of where the light bulb switched on for me, that I got to do something. We got to take a stand. We got to raise our voice. And I think that being a worship leader and being a giant slayer go hand in hand. You look at David, that's what he did. He slayed giants and he wrote songs. So I like that. I like that blueprint right there.
I love that. That's a great analogy. But as you know, there were a lot of people who told David that he couldn't do it. There's probably a lot of people in your family, friends, and inner circle who were saying during the pandemic, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And tell everybody a little bit about your story, how you start. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the same like worship and the same heart that we had in the nations was really the same thing that we did when the pandemic happened. Things were closed down. It was hard. There was a spirit of fear that was dominating people's minds and hearts, and the media was weaponizing that, and politicians were weaponizing that. And so just like we brought worship in to Iraq at the height of ISIS, we felt like we needed to bring worship in the cities across America that were in crisis, in calamity, and confusion. And that's the thing that happens is when light shines in the darkness, it exposes a lot, but it brings hope. And so anyway, that was the same principles that we had used in the nations around the world were what we applied during that season of COVID.
So you went around and did concerts when nobody else was, but you did outdoor concerts, right?
Yeah, we did. We held worship gatherings. And so we, some people may call it concerts. Some people may call it protests. We used the protest thing when they said we couldn't do it. We said, well, you just let BLM do a thing. Why not Christians? So We'll call this a Christian protest, but really our heart is like, churches are closed. They're deemed non-essential. Marijuana dispensaries, strip clubs are open, bars are open, casinos are open. And yet the church is the one that actually brings the hope and life to the nation. And so we got to be the church. And if we can't meet in our buildings, we're going to meet outside in the street. If we can't meet inside of, our structures that we've had for years, we're going to go to the beach, and we're going to have church on the beach, and we're going to have church, in the park, and we're going to have church in the downtown street. And so that was kind of our heart behind it. Was now more than ever, people need life, they need hope, they need connection. And the Lord called us to do it in these cities across America.
Well, thank you so much for being bold and brave, but I know that comes at a cost. You know who my husband is, right?
I do.
He is not without controversy. And I know that there are all of his life. he has stood up. I don't know if you're familiar with his song Stranglehold, but before he was going into the studio to record it, his whole band, his management, everybody in the studio said, you can't do that. You can't, it doesn't have, a formula, and you can't do a 12-minute song, and it's not going to work, and you can't do it. He let everybody speak. And then he said, are you done? Let's go record the song. And it was one of the biggest hits he's ever had. But my point is, has that ever happened to you when so many people in your life, perhaps people that you know and love and trust, said, yeah, you can't keep doing this?
Yeah, I mean, we got told that a lot. We got told that by family members, by people we love, by leaders that we trust. And I think there comes a point at the end of the day where, like, are you going to live by the fear of men, or are you going to live by the fear of the Lord? And, I'm not going to answer to those people, however much I love them and respect them. At the end of the day, when I'm standing before the Lord to give account for my life, I'm not accountable to them, and oftentimes pioneers and trailblazers, you can look at it one way. You can say, yeah, there's a lot of resistance, or you can actually say, you know what, the resistance that we're feeling proves that we're actually on the right journey. And I think for a long time in America, Christians and people that love their country, and they haven't had a lot of resistance. And so they sometimes interpret that as they might be doing something wrong. But what if even the resistance is confirmation that they're doing something right?
Yeah, I love that. Well, there's so many people who just went along with what was going on in the pandemic. And you mentioned when we first started that a lot of people were starting to see what their kids were learning or weren't learning via Zoom calls. That's, I guess, one benefit, one good thing that came out of the pandemic is that parents really woke up and said, oh no, you're not teaching my kids that. And I think there's so much, scrutiny now. It seems like this world is so divided. You're either on that camp or this camp. And especially in Christian music, do you find that? Do you find that there are people who saying, oh my gosh, you've got to go along with what everybody else is saying? Because I know there are some out there that do.
Yeah, I mean, just to be honest, I think I was really disappointed in disheartened by the way most of the Christian musicians responded in the pandemic. I think that they responded in fear. I think that they responded a lot of them, just to be honest, weren't living up to their own songs. You can't sing songs about, not being a slave to fear, or you can't sing songs about slaying the giant in the land and then be afraid of a virus with a 99.98% survivable rate. We're called to be people that don't give into fear, but we have faith. We're called to be people that we don't run when it gets dark. We don't run away and hide when it gets dark, watching a Zoom screen with a mask on. We actually bring the light into the darkness. And so, I think we had to face that. We had to face the noise or the music, so to speak, of what we really believe. And some people, I don't think they responded too well. Now, not to shame people that responded in fear. I think there's probably a lot of people even watching this that would be honest and say that's how I responded. I don't use that as a tool to shame people, but I would say it's good to take inventory on how you responded, because there's going to be another test that's coming soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. I kind of think that that was just a precursor for what's about to come.
Yeah.
Who was going to fall in line in lockstep and who wasn't. And those of us who didn't, we're the outliers, and we're the people who are standing up, and we're being bold and brave. Tell me a little bit about, this was interesting when I read this about you, that you were even considering getting it, or you did try to get into politics. You were running for political office.
Yeah, I told God that I would go wherever he sent me, and when I gave him my surrender of my life as a teenager, it didn't matter. It wasn't just restricted to a certain nation or a certain job or role. And even though those have changed throughout the years, I've always tried my best to follow his voice and be obedient. And so I really felt like this call, like I was supposed to go and and run for Congress, US Congress. And I thought, I've gone to a lot of prayer meetings that things would change, and I don't see them changing. And now it's time to take it to the next level and maybe become for the fulfillment of my own prayer, And so in California, I ran as a conservative for Congress, which it's not for the faint at heart. We'll just say that. But it really was incredible because it allowed me to peek behind the veil of the agendas and the darkness and the things that were happening that I didn't know were happening. I was very naive, and being able to peek behind that veil and see how dark it was really gave me a special insight for when COVID happened. And when the restrictions started to come down, particularly those against the church, I had a different perspective than most people did.
So you did pretty well. Any thoughts about getting back into the race? Because California needs you.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think I would probably have to have an angel open a scroll to get me to do that again. But, God can do whatever he wants. I just, for me, I think that obviously I wanted to run to win. And I think that that's what everybody does. However, I think the Lord had different strategy. And like I'm coming to you today from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And we have a ministry house here on Capitol Hill. And we're doing the things that I felt like we were called to do, that I felt like I was called to do in Congress, but we're doing it from outside. And to be honest with you, I think we're a lot more effective in what we're doing now than even if I was to get elected.
Well, good for you. You've got a documentary coming out. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Super Spreader. It's our documentary on the Let Us Worship movement, and kind of what we were talking about in the beginning, this movement of worship that happened at the height of COVID. And, we kind of defied these tyrannical government orders, and we were called super spreaders, and we were said that we were killing people. And however, spoiler alert, there was no COVID outbreaks tied to any of our gatherings. And we went to 170 cities across America. We gathered hundreds of thousands of people. But the super spreader name that the trolls like to use, the mayors like to use, and the governors like to use, I kind of felt like, let's just embrace it. Like, we are super spreaders. But the thing is, we're not spreading the virus you think we are. We're spreading a different virus, more powerful. It's one of hope. It's one of life. It's one of joy. It's one of freedom. And so the film really follows our journey, and it shows the raw emotion and of what we experienced, the good, bad, the ugly. And, it's undeniable that God's hand was moving, but we had a lot of resistance. And I think it hopefully, my prayer is that it inspires people in seasons like that to rise up and be bold. And it comes out September 29th, which is Thursday, one night only, at theaters across America, 528 theaters across America.
Wow,
that is tickets awesome. At superspreaderfilm.com.
That is awesome. We'll definitely put the link below. And I want to find out, when you were filming and when you were being a super spreader all across the country, was there a lot of protesters that came and said you can't be doing what you're doing? Did you?
Oh yeah, I mean, we were protested by Antifa, by Satanists. We were protested by some really nasty, gnarly people. Even just recently, as a few weeks ago in Boulder, Colorado, we had some LGBTQ, LMNOPY, groups show up, and they had the most
QRST.
Yeah, they had the most perverted signs and slogans, and they had megaphones, and they were chanting the most sickening stuff. I mean, that's kind of stuff that we deal with all the time. We're used to that pushback. But yeah, there was a season there where it was pretty gnarly. Like, we would have to have bodyguards everywhere we went. Death threats were sent to my house. People were saying that they were going to kill my kids and rape my wife. I mean, just wild stuff. Here we were, just bringing worship open air to America, crazy.
What a shame that people, what I find, I've been going along with my husband. He had a little tour recently for the first time in 2 years, and went through a lot of the Midwest. Went to, I think, 40 states in 60 days or something like that. And, you know, people genuinely, when you meet them face to face, they're nice. You know, there's not, I have yet to meet somebody who's really would say something to your face that would be other than kind and generous. But when, you know, it seems like this internet thing that we all have and know and love, and for some reason, people won't hesitate to say nasty things to you. And I've also had death threats sent via the internet. So it's just incredible to me. That means we're on to something. And Satan doesn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, people like to hide, keyboard warriors, they like to hide in their mom's basement behind a screen, and they act all tough. And most of the time, they're full of it, you know. And you know, we understand that it's veiled threats, it's fear, it's intimidation. But you know, as you watch the film, you will see some real violence, you know, unleashed against us. You'll see Antifa pouring you know, super glue on our equipment and trashing our drum kit. And you'll see Satanists with bowls of blood running after our team members. I mean, we experienced some really gnarly stuff. However, God prevails, you know, and he's given us the victory, breakthrough. And the cities where we've had the most violent people against us have been the ones that have been the most powerful.
Well, they certainly need you. And thank you for what you're doing, for being bold and brave in the face of evil, because people do need to hear your message, this message. And I can't wait to watch your documentary.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Really
God bless you.
God bless you too.